Good morning. I'm Jana Irwin, Head of Education at the Ulrich Museum, and thanks to everyone for joining us this morning for our ongoing series of 10 paired faculty talks taking place during the 23rd Faculty Biennial. It's all part of the process. On view through May 8th, our galleries are open with safety protocols in place Monday through Saturday, 11 to 5, and as always, free to all. Now in its 46th year, the biennial showcases the breadth of creative work and research being undertaken by the faculty of the School of Art, Design, and Creative Industries in art history, art education, ceramics, curatorial practice, drawing, graphic design, painting, photography, printmaking, sculpture, and new media. The series of talks on the biennial's theme, It's All Part of the Process, seeks to prompt reflections and start conversations about each faculty member's personal process, highlighting the diversity of activities that contribute to creative practice, from research to studio time to interactions with colleagues and students. I hope you will join us for the next virtual faculty talks on Thursday, April 15th at 10 a.m. with Kristen Beal, Gallery Manager and Lecturer, and Dr. Claudia Peterson, Associate Professor of Art History. Our first guest faculty this morning is Adjunct Instructor Megan St. Clair, who will be joining us via pre-recorded presentation as she is busy teaching her younger learners at Independent this morning. Megan received a BA from Wichita State University in 2011 and an MFA from the University of Oregon in 2015. She studied aluminum plates at the Tamarind Institute of Lithography and is presented at the College Books Arts Association Conference and the Kansas Artist Craftsmen Association Conference. Megan has exhibited her work nationally, including the Red Line Gallery in Milwaukee, in conjunction with the Southern Graphics Council International Annual Conference. Associate Professor of Photo Media Jennifer Ray received her MFA in photography from Columbia College Chicago and BA in studio art from Oberlin College. Jennifer's work is in the collections of the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, the Museum of Contemporary Photography, the Museo del Barro, the Fundación Bienal Asunción, and the Kinsey Institute for Research in Sex, Gender, and Reproduction, and was selected for the first Asunción Bienal in Paraguay and Bienal de Curitiba, Brazil, and has been exhibited at the RISD Museum of Art, the Chelsea Art Museum, the Museum of Contemporary Photography, Hyde Park Art Center, and Chicago Cultural Center, among other venues. Jennifer has been awarded residencies at Latitude Chicago, Acre, and Unpack in Havana and Toronto. Her work is included in the Collector's Guide to New Art Photography, published by Humble Arts Foundation, and she has received research grants from the Illinois Arts Council, Columbia College, the Chicago Office of Tourism and Culture, Oberlin College, and Wichita State University. After both presentations, I'll give everyone permission to turn on your cameras and mics. I hope you will all choose to do so and join us in the conversation. And please feel free to add your questions or comments to the chat box throughout the presentations. Any questions that you have for Megan, please put them in the chat box and I will share them with her and send answers your way. So we'll start off with Megan's presentation and then we'll invite Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Megan St. Clair, and I'm adjunct faculty here at Wichita State, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share my work with you all. The root definition of paranormal breaks down into two parts: para meaning beside, alongside of, beyond, and normal meaning conformity, usual, or regular. It is the space of being alongside or beyond the normal that I have come to question. I've been researching what lies beneath the appearance of things through the use of objects, video, projections, and sound. I explore the possibility of the collapsing of space and time and the idea of portals opening up into other realms. My work directly relates to ideas of the uncanny, the abject, hauntings, and possessions. My grandmother was a key figure in my life and introduced me to the supernatural realm. Her house was haunted. Doors would slam shut. You would always feel the presence of someone right behind you. The dog was afraid to go into certain parts of the house, and then there was the ominous basement. One of my fondest memories with her was driving along the country dirt roads on the way to her house. Um, we would stop by the local folklore bridge, where it is said that a woman named Theorosa had lost her baby, and if you call out to her, she would appear. Um, my grandmother would always stop on the bridge and yell out, Theorosa, Theorosa, I have your baby. And me and my sister would always end up screaming. Um, my grandmother also had premonitions that would come true in dreams, and then um, visits from death in her sleep. She suffered from emphysema and died several years ago. And that process was really interesting to me. So, as my whole family sat around in the room while she was laying there dying, I witnessed the death rattle for the first time. And during the death rattle, I swore I heard her talking, but no one else acknowledged it. So wasn't sure if I was just going crazy. But looking back now, I'm pretty sure that I was just psychically hearing her, and I was just the only one open enough to hear. And then ever since this experience, I feel that my own abilities to sense spirits has increased. Whether you believe in any spirit world or ghostly beyond, we're all haunted by memories and losses in the events of our lives. For me, the veil between the spirit world and my daily life is thin, but this haunting also provides me a tapestry to draw upon within my art. Um, on a side note, as I was working on this presentation, during a break I went over to my parents, and me and my mom both heard like a banging noise, and I also heard an accompanied yoo-hoo, which is what my grandmother would say when she would walk into the house when she would come over. But my mom didn't hear the yoo-hoo, only I did. So I think she was visiting me while I was working on this presentation. Okay, so during grad school, I took a writing for artists class, and we would do free writing exercises. The instructor would start her clock, and we would just write unrestrictedly for 8 minutes. And it was during one of these exercises that all this information about my grandmother and my connection to the paranormal realm came out. And it ended up being the start to my thesis, The Thin Place. So, The Thin Place was an installation that consisted of projections, audio, haunted objects, and that acted as metaphoric portals to other realms. And there were two separate parts to it. There was a projection with an interactive audio element, and then there was an armoire. On the projection side, there was a window frame and a ladder, which acted as points of entry into the projection. And then residing on the adjacent wall was an armoire, and housed within it was a chandelier that had infested like insect hives in it. Um, and then, like the ladder, the armoire had a shovel next to it, which offered the viewer a tool to enter or exit the space. And then, using cinematic and religious tropes of hauntings and demonic possessions, I looked at the fear of things that are alien to us. I also researched movies such as The Conjuring and Insidious that worked with the idea of an armoire housing malevolent spirits, and also being portals to other worlds. So there are three stages in a demonic possession: infestation, oppression, and possession. And so for this work, I focused on the first stage, which was the infestation stage. And during this infestation stage, the presence of an intruder is subtle, and the afflicted person might start to hear scratching noises or whispers, and they think that they're going crazy and not sure what is real or not. And then another trope used in cinema to portray a possession is the use of insects. And so this armoire that I had in the space acted as a haunted architecture, and there were mud dauber wasp nests that were attached to the chandelier, and then also just in the body of the armoire. And then they also had a sound element of subtle sounds coming from the armoire, and making you question if what you're hearing was real. Okay, and then so that was the armoire part. The projection had kind of three videos to it within it. The first two dealt with the idea of residual energy, haunted residual energy. So I looked to places where traumatic occurrences happen. And so for this, the first two parts of the video or of scenes, both shot at Meningers, which is an abandoned mental asylum in Topeka, Kansas. One was of the main hospital's boarded up windows, and then the other shot was of the smokestacks on the compound. The third part of the projection of the video was Ghost Dance, which examined the hallway trope. And I pulled inspiration from Rob Zombie's film Halloween 2. The opening scene of Halloween 2 takes place in a hospital, and the overhead fluorescent lights flicker and reflect on the tile floor. And the sister of Michael Myers relives the nightmare of being chased by her brother. Anyways, here's a clip of Ghost Dance. Okay. The next piece that I want to talk about is Intruder. In The Pervert's Guide to Cinema, Slavoj Žižek, can never say his name right, describes the tension between illusion and reality residing in the space where a foreign dimension intrudes. When looking at the 1973 film The Exorcist, he talks about the voice coming from a space in between the body and an intruder from an obscene dimension and an object of anxiety. With that in mind, I focused on the tension between illusion and reality and the unseen intruder. Intruder is an installation that consisted of projections, audio, and a bed. Looking at possessions, Intruder pulls directly from The Exorcist. A bed sits in the gallery. A bedroom is viewed as a place of sanctity, a place where one is safe. However, in the film The Exorcist, the sanctity has been compromised by an intruder. The video is projected onto a large white cross mounted on the wall. And then the audio clips includes clips from The Exorcist. And both locations in the video were shot at churches. And then just some backstory. My personal connection to the film The Exorcist stems back to my early teenage years when I would play the Ouija board. One of my more profound experiences I had was my encounter with Captain Howdy. My best friend and I were playing with the Ouija board at my parents' house. And the spirit came through, said his name was Captain Howdy. And all of a sudden, my cassette player turned on, and the song that popped on, the song lyrics that came across said, "Stay away from Captain Howdy." Me and my friend ran out of the room screaming, and I later learned, after watching the film again as an adult, that the spirit or demon that possesses Reagan in the movie The Exorcist is named Captain Howdy. And I am still freaked out and perplexed by the experience to this day. Oh, and the cassette, the album, the band was Twisted Sister. So, anyways, so here is a clip of Intruder.
You're gonna die up there. You're gonna die up there. You're gonna die up there.
What an excellent day for an exorcism. What an excellent day.
Okay, the next piece that I want to show you guys is Portal, which revisits the hallway trope. And this time I actually went to the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, which is where Stephen King stayed at and got inspiration for the book. However, I pulled a lot more inspiration from Stanley Kubrick's film in this work. So specifically the hallway scene, elevator scene where the blood just comes flushing into the space. And in my work, I use the fog to mimic this flooding action. The other two locations in the work are also purported haunted locations. And in this, I worked with audio clips from Nightmare on Elm Street. And the way I work with audio clips mixed in with my sound art is indirect inspiration from the way Rob Zombie worked with his earlier music, specifically White Zombie. Where he would sample in audio clips from horror films and interviews with cult members, all the things close to my heart. So this work also included a neon sculpture of the word exit, which acted as a portal into another realm. And here is a clip of that.
not always what is real.
Okay, so where we're at now is to my current work, Serial, which is on view right now here at the Ulrich. In 1908, the physicist Sir Oliver Lodge proposed that hauntings were a ghostly representation of some long past tragedy. With this work, I revisit the idea of a residual haunting or residual energy attached to a location. For this work, I explored the locations of BTK's killings, Wichita's own sites of horror. The horrific nature in which BTK's victims' lives were ended would undoubtedly leave some sort of lingering stain, a haunting, whether it be a traditional sense of like a physical manifestation or just the memory of what happened. In addition to investigating the possible residual hauntings associated with these locations, I'm also interested in examining the abject nature of the serial killer. In Powers of Horror, an essay on abjection, Julia Kristeva looks at the repressed and literally unspeakable forces that linger inside a person's psyche. What drives a person to commit such crimes? Dennis Rader stated that he was driven to kill by factor X, a supernatural element. And are these real life boogeymen under some sort of possession to carry out these unspeakable acts? And here's a clip of Serial.
We continue with prayers of personal confession. I invite you to a time of prayer and to confess your sins to our Lord. Let us pray.
Let us pray.
Our self-indulgent appetites and ways, we confess to you. Have mercy on us, O God.
Was a picture with a pair of glasses upside down, and it simply said, "Call the chief," knowing that he was watching this.
I'll stuff your jaws till you can't talk. I'll blind your legs till you can't walk. I'll tie your hands till you can't make a stand. And finally, I'll close your eyes so you can't see.
Thank you all so much for your time. Please feel free to email me with any questions that you might have about my work, or feel free to visit my website and take a look at some of the other things that I've done. Thank you so much.
All right, Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello. I don't know exactly who's here, but you guys probably know me. I'm Jennifer Ray. And I'm talking about a project that I've been working on for actually about 9 years, I think. So some of you may have seen me talk about it before, and to that end, I am going to talk about it in a really different way than I've ever talked about it, which, let's see, I'm trying to share my screen. There we go. Which, kind of true to the name of the show, I'm going to talk a lot more about my process than I ever do, which, yeah, I don't usually talk about process at all in artist talks. So just to introduce the project, this began as a somewhat documentary project about a shooting range or a kind of public land that was used as that is used as a shooting range outside of Casper, Wyoming. And I think because it is a really unregulated place, there's just all kinds of crazy things that people shoot at, and they just leave them there. So I was first just drawn to this area because I was able to find such massive amounts of stuff that had been left behind. And a lot of it I found really intriguing. Some of it, like this couch, is sort of, I don't know, I guess what you might expect. But then finding things like these Polaroids, which have lost their images. The emulsion is so degraded that there's only a hint of the original image. But I like that you are left with the task of sort of completing the narrative behind them. And that's what I always find myself doing. As I worked on this project a little bit more, I started thinking about overlaps with other kinds of images historically. So this is Franz Snyders, who was like a Dutch artist in the 17th century, but this is really more an example of a type of image, this kind of still life representing a bounty, but also representing sort of violence and death. And thinking about how those kind of contradictory elements have always been part of our existence. So this is sort of my Dutch still life. I want to talk a little bit more about where I'm photographing. So I have found that I've looked all around the country to try and find other locations like this, because, you know, Wyoming is kind of a little ways away from here, and it'd be a lot easier if I could shoot closer to home. But I think this particular area is really notable. So as this kind of marker says, this is right along the Oregon Trail, kind of this original pathway of colonialism. And you know, if you see this text, this is noting the first white man's cabin in Wyoming, which is a really problematic way, I think, to note this spot. Also, you notice that there are bullet holes in here. It's also the area where Dick Cheney has kind of a family ranch. And here's his mailbox, which I just stumbled across one day. And let's see, about 10 miles away from the mailbox actually is the entrance to the property. I always, I kind of go visit it every time I go out to photograph, just to, I don't know, see if anything is different, see if I spot Dick Cheney. I never have, but I always kind of wonder if there's a surveillance camera hidden somewhere. So this is like really, really kind of libertarian red country. This is something that I see all the time. I don't know if you caught that Trump flag going by. It's really used for hunting and for cattle farming. And I think it's, I think the sort of nature, the landscape and the ways that that landscape have been used.
Jennifer, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think we're not seeing the images as you go through. What we're seeing right now is the thumbnails.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we didn't see the video clip.
Oh, well, it worked when we tried it, didn't it?
Yeah, we're just seeing the thumbnails.
Let me go again. Did that make it bigger?
No,
No.
no,
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I didn't.
that's okay.
Let me. And it's still showing just a thumbnail.
It is.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just gonna have to make it bigger.
That will work.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So I think the nature of this landscape and the kind of historical uses, it's a kind of big fossil fuel production area. The road that I shoot on actually is the name of the road is Coal Mountain, and that kind of tells you a lot about how the landscape has been exploited for resources. People sometimes ask me for kind of more visuals about the space that I'm shooting, and this is just a little clip of kind of the I don't know. This is what it looks like kind of all around this area, and you can hear gunshots. Another kind of unmitigated view of the scene. Sometimes people ask me why I don't photograph things exactly as I found them. And this is really the answer. It's because it doesn't really look like much. Everything has already been destroyed. And in my photographs, I kind of think that I am reconstructing the images in a way that allows me to create metaphor and to act as sort of a reflector to society. So in this one, I was thinking about kind of traditions of film traditions. So I was thinking about drive-by shootings and like this scene from The Godfather that you have all probably seen, one of the most gruesome scenes in sort of movie history. And thinking about how I can use the things that I find in this landscape, how I can use them to reflect my own views and understandings of gun culture and how it relates to broader American culture and American history. Again, I'm thinking about metaphor here. This is like, if you can't tell, this is a children's playhouse door. And so I was thinking about this real contrast between the sort of innocence of the object itself and what had been sort of done to it. And it sort of became this, I felt like it became a grave marker almost. Similarly, I think this image is about it's about death and using an object to represent both a hypothetical person and a tradition. So, really the tradition of sort of the Western lone cowboy who stoically, dies sort of in some honorable way in a gunfight with the bad guys. So going back to the kind of behind the scenes, the images don't really show you much about how I actually make them. If you're a photographer and kind of understand these things, you might have a sense of how this works, but there are a lot of difficulties. So I usually wear a headlamp when I'm out photographing at night, and this is the peril of wearing a headlamp. So we got just a swarm of bugs. Other perils of the area. The land basically turns into concrete as soon as it gets wet, and I've gotten my car stuck many times. I've nearly slid my car down the side of a mountain. I'm always driving on roads that aren't really roads. I'm always worried about flipping my car over, which is probably not the kind of thing that most people worry about when they're making art. This road kills me every time I try and drive over it. So I have spent an enormous amount of time in this landscape. Oh, and speaking of my car, it's a really important tool in this process, and it just becomes filled up. I collect a lot of the objects that I photograph, and after a week of photographing, my car is just basically filled with trash. I look like a homeless person in the car. But I've gotten to know the landscape really well, and I see these kind of changes happening, and because I'm revisiting the same spot over and over, I think I'm able to work with the landscape and relate to it a bit differently. So this was just a wildfire that started while I was shooting, and then the kind of lovely aftermath of it. This is the North Platte River that is pretty close to where I'm shooting. More fun perils, lots of rattlesnakes. And there are just wild storms that creep up out of nowhere. Well, I'm not sure if that video is working. But I do have a very helpful companion. If you know me, you probably know my dog Hudson, and for the last few years, he's come out with me while I photographed, and it's really actually incredibly helpful to have a dog with me. You can see he's in full safety gear, but he's a pretty natural watchdog, and so while I'm shooting at night, I'm always nervous, mostly for sort of unwarranted reasons. My biggest fear is like being eaten by a mountain lion, which is very unlikely. But there are also lots of coyote and I don't know, all kinds of critters that I think hearing them while I'm working tends to make me really nervous. So he usually kind of plants himself just at the edge of where I'm working, and is always on the alert. When I first began the project, I didn't have him, and it makes it significantly easier to work when I have kind of this dog with me who lets me know anytime something's coming, and he loves being out there. So that's a afternoon ritual right before the sun goes down. I usually let him just run. There's nobody else on the roads. But I have a new dog now, and this is Larkin. I just got her a few months ago, and I have no idea how she will manage if I take her out shooting with me. She has a totally different personality. So we'll see. You might see her in future photos. And there's also a lot of really unexpected beauty in this sort of devastated landscape. These were, I don't know exactly what this material was. It was like these little tiny like plastic balls, but they reflected this prism. It's pretty spectacular sunsets and great views of the Milky Way. So back to the work. As it's progressed over the years, I've become more and more intentional about talking about particular aspects of gun culture with my work. The title of this one is "They're Coming for Our Women," and I think there is this strain of chivalry, which I would say is misguided, that puts women in the position of being a victim. And the kind of facts around gun ownership is that guns in the house make women more likely to be injured or killed in domestic violence situations. And so I think there's this really contradictory impulse that is both about sort of protecting women from outsiders. If you can see, I don't know if you can see very well, but this guy is in like kind of Arab costume. So there's this real insider outsider sense. And these are targets that somebody made and was using to shoot at. Again, thinking about the push and pull of gender dynamics as they relate to gun culture. Mannequins are kind of a favorite target. And in fact, I was looking for a mannequin on Craigslist a couple of years ago for the photo lab, to have something to photograph for lighting demos. And I came across a mannequin that wasn't listed as a mannequin, it was listed as a shooting target. And so that's, I think clearly something that people like to do. On the one hand, it's sort of intuitive. If you want to practice shooting and you want to practice shooting at human forms because that's what you're scared of, then sure, a mannequin makes sense. But I think there is kind of this dark joy in blowing apart something that resembles a human. So I wanted to photograph this. This is kind of the chest portion of a mannequin. And it's photographed on a monster truck tire, which you'll actually see the tire fully in a few more shots. But I tried to light this almost like kind of the stereotypical sort of semi-erotic, beautiful nude of a woman. I tried to light it in the same way. And I also found the back part of her neck. These pieces of her were, probably a football field apart. Again, thinking about masculinity and how it relates to gun culture. These are the title of this piece is Protein Powder Power Tower. And I think there is this impulse to optimize yourself. And part of that is sort of being prepared for everything, being like strong and muscular, and being prepared for the zombie apocalypse or the race wars or whatever might be coming. And I think you see this reflected in advertising and the way that products are sold to people. And this is a drink that you can probably find in the gas station down the street. The drink is literally called Bang, and it advertises itself as being like, it's going to optimize your mind and make you stronger and smarter, but it's like soda. So this is kind of the advertising image that I was thinking about when I made this one. So I think I'm always trying to digest and reflect back current events. And unfortunately, there's all kinds of content to respond to these days. So the title of this piece is "They Say Books Make for Good Improvised Body Armor in an Active Shooter Situation." So I made it not too long after, some school shooting, I think maybe after Parkland. And you were seeing a lot of sort of active shooter drills in like elementary schools that was, I think, having a really negative impact on kids, and kids who are being trained how to kind of like pack their backpacks with books if they're sort of sheltering from a shooter. And there are lots of videos online of people trying this out. I haven't seen anyone who's dumb enough to like shoot at themselves, but this guy was demonstrating how to make your own kind of body armor out of books. So I should, before I go on, I should mention the way that I research. And I think research is, for me, an incredibly important part of this project. I only photograph once a year. I can only photograph in the summer, both for logistical reasons and also most of the year it's too cold at night to shoot there. So the rest of the year I am working on the project, but in ways that aren't visual. It's reading, keeping up with sort of current events, but also I end up watching a lot of YouTube videos of like people who are really invested in guns and sharing information about guns, and thinking about how those people kind of push forward certain certain elements, and make people more afraid than they otherwise might be. So this brings me to the work that I have up in the Ulrich right now, which is a series of photos of vinyl records that I found last summer when I was out photographing, and it was really interesting. I found, I don't know, maybe 20 of these. Some had been shot and some had not been shot. And this might be happenstance, but all of the ones that had been shot were either sort of controversial material or as material by women or by Black people or by gay people. So you guys probably know all the controversy around War of the Worlds. This is a kind of British adaptation, but War of the Worlds being this very controversial radio play where people assumed that they were hearing something that was real about Martians attacking. And there are lots of stories about people, running out onto the street and calling their police departments and really creating chaos. And a lot of people were quite angry about it. This is the cover of Hair, the musical. In the photographs I showed prior of this piece of land burning, this is kind of the result of it, these charred posts. So Hair, you might know, was also incredibly controversial when it was originally produced, because I believe there were kind of portions of the musical that were sort of anti-war and depicted the desecration of the flag, and I think maybe there was like either a same-sex couple or an interracial couple, and it was so controversial that there was actually a lot of violence or attempted violence against the cast. There was a bombing that fortunately didn't injure anyone. There was the hotel where the cast and crew were staying was firebombed, and I think three of the cast members, family members, died in the resulting fire. Let's see. This is Queen. Freddie Mercury, as I think most of us know, was somewhat closeted most of his life, and is generally thought to have died as a complication of HIV/AIDS. I think we widely love Queen, and yet we sort of have long been somewhat unaccepting or devaluing of his struggles. Some of these albums are not sort of well-known figures, but I think the covers are, and the fact that they've been shot, is potentially really telling, and talks about how producers of culture are sometimes targeted, literally targeted. Barbra Streisand, this is on my favorite monster truck tire. And I have a few more behind the scenes images. In the photograph, all I'm concerned with is like what's in the frame. And so I'm doing a lot of construction in the images. Sometimes the viewer is a bit unaware of how much I'm doing, but I'm painting part of this monster truck tire pink, which I always like leaving behind strange things like that for the next folks who might shoot there. Here's my hair album. This is the War of the Worlds photo. And the last piece I'll talk about is this one, which is also in the show. So this is, I don't know, some text about Christianity. And I found it, clearly it's been shot at and been sitting out in the desert for a while. But it's talking about vengeance, and the phrase in the Bible about vengeance belonging to God. But we so often, I think in popular culture, misquote this to say vengeance is mine, like me, sort of the human. I'm the one who gets to avenge the wrongs that have been done to me. So thinking about this work and actually sort of processing the events of January 6th, the Capitol riots, it made me, I decided to change the title of the project. So for the last 9 years, the title of the project has been In Range. So it's a bit weird to change it that far in, but I've changed it to Shouting Fire, which is a reference to, the famous phrase, like, you can't shout fire in a crowded theater, which is about the limitations of our personal rights. And I think we saw this real connection between sort of our complicated First Amendment rights and the violence that led to on January 6th. And so I think there's this real, there are all these contradictions and complications about, particularly right now, we're really dealing with free speech and gun rights. And I think there's a lot of skewing of what those rights actually entail. And I think some people are arguing that both should be unregulated, and that there should be no consequences for behavior or actions or speech that does start to encroach on other people's rights. So on that cheery note, I think that is all I have to say about this project, and I'm very happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Jennifer. We have a few in the chat box, and Ryan Lawrence asked one that I was thinking about as you were talking about your research process during the winter months. And he asked, do you have any advice for dealing with such heavy and emotionally charged content and not becoming overwhelmed or burnt out?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think because I am only photographing once a year, I feel really fresh every time I sort of come to the project to actually make the photographs. And while I'm photographing, I'm in I would say a very sort of a very working mindset. You know, I'm super concentrated when I'm working. That's one of the reasons why I love traveling to make work, is I can put a away notice up on my email and not respond to any phone calls, and only think about the stuff. And yeah, so I don't know. I don't find it difficult. I've been asked that question before, and sometimes people think I'm like a psychopath when I say that I don't find it difficult. But I do find a lot of the stuff that's going on in our country right now extremely difficult.
Yeah. Hi, Don. I know you typed a question into the chat box. Would you want to go ahead and ask that while I'm giving everybody the...
Sure. Let me unmute
Thanks.
myself here.
Hi, Dan.
Jennifer, I know you've gone up to Wyoming to do this. We've been paying attention to this project for a while. I'm sure you went in with some expectations of what you would find there, but was there anything that you learned that really surprised you while you were there that you never expected that you would learn during this?
I think, you know, when I started the project, I always stumble into my projects, and that's how I began this one. And the first summer I worked on it, I frankly took a kind of a lighthearted approach to it. This was 2012, you know, right in the middle of Obama's presidency. And then I set the project down. I didn't work on it again for 5 years, and I picked it up in 2017. And it really felt like the country had changed, or you know, I think it's fair to argue that the country has kind of always been certain ways. But all of a sudden, there was all this hatred that was on the surface instead of kind of being hidden. And there are things that I haven't photographed, things that felt too racist, frankly. And I've collected them, which I'm always worried that somebody's gonna like open up my garage and be like, oh my gosh, like you're an awful person. You have all of this like racist targets in your garage. Like, but I haven't figured out what to do with them. It seemed kind of important to keep, but these are, you know, a lot of people will like make their own targets. And then like write things on them or draw things on them, or they're using things that they printed out at home. Yeah, so I've been really surprised by the obviousness of some of that, you know, that people aren't ashamed to.
Yeah.
Brittany had to leave for a student appointment, but she'd love to talk sometime about the way you called the mannequin her, not it, and how gender impacts your thinking about the photo. Are there also male mannequins at the site? And I was wondering the same thing.
I haven't seen any. I've only seen pieces of female mannequins. You know, one of the reasons why I don't photograph the shooters, there are other photographers who've made work where they're making portraits of shooters in similar situations. But I don't feel comfortable ascribing intent to anyone. And I want it to be clear that when I'm working with these materials, you know, I wonder about the intent of the shooters, but you know, in most cases, it's hard to know. And so, you know, whoever's shooting at that mannequin, I'm not sure that I'm comfortable saying like, well, they're a misogynist. They might be. They might also just be, finding things that they can shoot at. There, all kinds of meaningless stuff that ends up out there too. But I think gender is extremely kind of important in the conversations around gun culture. It is a very gendered activity. It's not exclusively gendered, but men far outweigh women in terms of gun ownership and gun usage.
Megan, you were asked, do you ever remove items from these environments to shoot in other locations or in a studio setting?
So I collect a lot of the stuff, and I frequently move things from place to place within this piece of land. So it's, I have no idea how many acres. It's a big piece of public land that is used for this. And I regularly will kind of take things from one spot to another, where I think it is sort of, I don't know, I can create a more compelling photo. And the objects that I bring back, I think I do that kind of compulsively because, I'm an artist. We collect random things that, probably don't ever end up being used. I've tried in some previous exhibitions, including some of the objects themselves, things that seemed more compelling as sort of, I don't know, ready-made sculptures rather than photographs. And I have to say it hasn't worked all that well, but the door's always open to that.
Joe Cox, our registrar at the museum, says thank you. They're great talks, and wonders if you can speak to the intention behind lighting in your work. There is such an attention to highlight and shadow. What does this mean to you and to the subject matter?
Yeah, lighting is really important to me, and I feel like it is one of the primary ways that I'm able to communicate my intent. Sometimes people overlook the lighting, and maybe don't realize that it's a really involved process. Just the shooting process for one photo often takes 3 or 4 hours. So I think in the places where I'm most proud of how the lighting is working, or where I think it's working most effectively, it's really communicating something very specific. So the image of the playhouse door that has a light behind it, I wanted to make that playhouse door almost look like it was, I don't know, like an angel or something like that. Like it had this kind of holy lighting. So I think that's where it's most effective. And otherwise, I think it really helps control the scene, and direct the viewer's eye.
We have a number of questions that I believe are from students in Kristen Beal's class. One asks, what's the furthest you have traveled for a single photograph?
Oh, I regularly do projects that require travel. I've done a lot of work in Cuba, which is probably the furthest I've gone to make work.
Second is, I really love this. I've always been fascinated by old objects that have been left behind. Do you ever consider in your art the thoughts and feelings that people felt as they shot up their objects? One would think that they meant something to the person at one point in their lives.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've kind of hinted at that. And there's some where I just can't help but imagine the who might have shot them, like the Polaroids. There's actually a small bit of writing that you can't really see very well in the digital image that just says Shane on the bottom of one of them. And so I just I always wonder who this person Shane is. and what they did to the shooter. That's what I wonder. I found a love note that's in a different photo that I didn't show today that actually has the name of the recipient in it, full first and last name. And I've looked this guy up, and I can find him on Facebook. Yeah, so I definitely wonder. It's fun to think about, or sad to think about. I don't know.
Last one, I think. How long do you intend to work on this long project? Do you suspect your project will evolve further throughout the future years?
That's a really good question. I keep thinking that it's time to wrap the project up. And then I go out to photograph, and I think, I'm not quite done yet. So I'm thinking about potentially trying to make a book of it. I got a book offer from a good publisher, but it was a bad offer. If you know anything about art book publishing, most of it is pay to play, even at the most reputable publishers. Anyway, so I declined this offer because I couldn't afford it. Yeah, but it got me thinking about, kind of creating some closure for the project by putting it into a book form. The project is getting really big.
It's been going on for nine, almost a decade.
Years. Yeah. But culture has changed. American culture has changed, I think, significantly through that time. I think after Biden's election, I thought, maybe that's a good end point for this project. But I'm not so sure that's really true.
I think Levente has his hand raised. Do you have a question, Levente?
Yes, I do. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi.
Thanks for the talk. I always enjoyed your work, and I'm glad that you brought up Dutch still life painting, because still lifes are really portraits of the cultures in which they are made. And I think that the way that you generate conversation about where we are and who we are is pretty fantastic. So my question really mainly is, how long are you at a location? Because, for example, with the protein powder jars, to make that kind of connection and to compose that photograph so closely to the way that it's composed in the advertisement itself. I mean, do you find these things and then you go in your car, hope you have internet access and start sort of researching the objects, or do you go out and take a bunch of photographs and then go to the hotel room or to a campsite and then really sort of try to figure out how to compose?
Yeah, I mean, the protein powder, I had an image in my head, and it just so happened that I was able to find sort of an advertising image that really closely matched it, although I wasn't looking at it when I made that image. Yeah, I think for me, the kind of looking and informing my visual, I guess, kind of internal library, that's the thing that happens while I'm not working, and it filters into the work while I'm making it.
Mm-hmm. So basically you have a lot of resources at your disposal just on your laptop to sort of try to, I guess, make connections through.
Mostly in my head.
Yeah, nice. Great work, thank you.
Thanks, Levente.
Hi, Don. Give me a second. We've got a few more questions that I'd like to. Oh, hi, Ranjit.
Okay.
Would you like to ask your question for Jennifer? I was just getting.
Yeah, I wanted to ask. Great presentation. Both of them were great. I just wanted to ask Jennifer if you've encountered anyone at the shooting sites, like right after they finished shooting, and have you ever had any confrontations with people who don't want you filming that stuff?
People are shooting there all the time while I'm out kind of collecting things and sifting through the landscape. Nobody's ever like even asked me what I'm doing. I think there are a lot of folks that go out there to collect brass shell casings, and I sort of think that most people think that's what I'm doing. So there are people out there that will be kind of like hunting around each little mini shooting range. Yeah.
I mean, it seems pretty dangerous too, though, to be at a site where people are shooting around you like that.
I have to be aware of my surroundings for sure. And I've, if you've ever had a bullet go past you, it's a very particular sound as it's like passing you. And it's different than all the other sounds that shooting makes. And so I've had that happen a few times. My biggest concern is that somebody shoots my dog, which is why he's like wearing all of this like.
Yeah, I noticed he had a lot of protective like gear on him, but
yeah,
I wondered if you did.
He's not a wolf, like, and he's pretty good. He stays close to me while I'm doing this. Yeah.
Don, let me get Grace Jessup's question in, and then we'll roll over to you. Grace asks, have you received any backlash from your work?
Yeah, sometimes, they're sort of, yeah, the criticism that I got that I think is most, the thing that I am most interested in dealing with, I suppose, are kind of worries about like, what does sort of representing this violence do? And I think that's a difficult question. And it's something that particularly in photography comes up a lot. I sort of have an answer to that, which is, I think it's important that one thing that artists do that is important is reflecting culture back to itself, and giving us a mirror to look at ourselves in maybe not the most flattering light. But I think the person who asked me that it really stuck with me was somebody who had been, she had been like mugged at gunpoint, and I think was left really traumatized by the experience. So she felt concerned that that there was some sort of like glossing over of the violence, the guns perpetrate. And I've been held at gunpoint too by cops a couple of times, and it is really scary. I think guns are pretty scary. Yeah, although if they're fun to shoot, I have enjoyed shooting them.
It's interesting. Perception is, varies, and I do wonder if you've noticed how the photographs are perceived. I mean, they're very seductive, and they're very, in their lighting and in their composition and everything that you create, right, for this photograph. I'm wondering if you've noticed how they're perceived based on the viewer's alignment, either pro or con.
Yeah. I mean, it's been really kind of interesting. I was showing this work to this gallerist in New York who, like, you think about a New York gallerist, you're like, probably not somebody who shoots. And the picture of the antelope leg, I was talking about that image, and I said, yeah, a lot of people seem to find this one really hard to look at. I find it a little bit hard to look at. And he said, why? Well, it's like kind of like viscerally disturbing. And he said, oh no, I think it's really beautiful. And it turns out that this guy is like a huge hunter, and like has this whole blog about meat eating. And so sometimes it's really surprising. The shows that I've had in Kansas, I think tend to be sort of a different audience, and there are more people who have kind of had a lot of experience with guns just growing up, and don't think about them as this loaded political topic. And I think that perspective is really interesting too. This work, I don't mean for the work to necessarily demonize individuals, but I think this country is so far off from any other country in the whole world in terms of our relationship with guns. and our willingness to accept gun violence without making policy changes, that I think we have to talk about it, and we have to interrogate this part of our culture. You know, it's so linked in with our history and you know, colonialism and Western expansion. All of these kind of facets of American culture have developed, you know, developed our love of guns.
Dawn, do you want to go ahead and ask your question? Sorry to make you wait.
Not a problem. I was going to be here anyway, and everything was so interesting. And mine plays off of what Rajit had already.
Oh dear. Oh no, Dawn, we're losing you. Oh.
I keep dropping out every now and again. Am I on here somewhere?
You're not now. You're gone again.
Okay.
Oh, well, we can hear you.
Okay. No, for some reason, my phone keeps dropping me out. I know your concerns about your own safety, and especially Hudson's with his bulletproof vest on and everything. But if you've put this into your project, I apologize that I've somehow missed it, but have you figured out a way to incorporate your own feelings of being in this area where this shooting is going on and all this destruction and everything that people have shot up with obvious intention of, I mean, they're not just going out there and shooting at a tree that happens to be out in that area. They've taken personal items to go out there and shoot up, and the way that makes you feel when you're in that environment. Have you figured out a way to incorporate that in your project?
No, I haven't. And you know, as I said in the beginning, this is the first time that I've showed any of these like process-oriented photos. I think maybe in grad school I was kind of like taught that all that stuff is not important. That's beside the point. Like the work means what it means, and like, you know, you don't get any sort of like bonus points for doing something that's risky. Like, you know, you just do it. You have to make the work, and I think I've definitely internalized that. However, I you know, I think I'm starting to see, you know, really looking at other artists and how they talk about their work, that you know, allowing sort of personal, you know, your personal relationship with the subject to be transparent or understandable to the viewer can be a really powerful strategy. So
yeah, as for me as a viewer, if you could put that in a way in your art that would allow me to understand the feeling of being there on site, that would be really powerful, and I'd be very interested in that if there's a way to do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna bottle the smell of gunpowder and like put it next to my show. The whole, you open up the car window and the whole area just smells like gunpowder all the time. It's pretty wild.
We have a question from Claudia. And her question is related to the gender politics of the work. And what does it mean to be a woman photographer working in relation to gun culture in the US? And what are your thoughts about normative masculinity and gun culture in your work?
I'll point out, if you guys hadn't noticed, these are courtesy of Claudia. I thought I'd debut them for my gun culture artist talk. So if you didn't see, these are made of, my earrings are made of bullets, or shell casings. Yeah, so I mean, I think gun culture in the US is just so wrapped up in, you know, it's almost cliche to say like toxic masculinity, but I think that's what it is. It's not to say that women don't use guns, don't own guns, don't enjoy shooting guns. They definitely do. And probably at, I don't know, somewhere I have the statistics about, you know, what percentage of gun owners are women, and it's higher than I would expect, but it's still very low compared to men. And I don't know, I think in unraveling why the US is different from other countries in this regard, it's complicated. I've spent the last really 7 years thinking a lot about this and researching a lot about it. And I think these facts of American history, particularly the way that Europeans colonized the country, or people of European descent colonized, the way that we have erased that the violence of that colonialism from our history. It's just not really taught very directly in our school books. I think that history is the thing that informs our obsession with guns. And most gun owners say that they own guns for self-protection, which to me is, it both flies in the face of statistics. Owning a gun makes you less safe. And there are very few instances every year of guns successfully being used in self-defense. And considerable numbers. It's like maybe like 300 a year situations like that that are recorded at least. And accidents involving guns is like 5,000 deaths a year. But I think it is really revealing that we are so scared of one another. I think it definitely has to do with race. Most gun owners are white men. And this feeling of, these gun owners feeling vulnerable, maybe because, because they know that historically they have, kind of engaged in historical violence. I think it's rooted in all that white supremacy and chauvinism. I don't know. It's a complicated thing.
Well, we have gone way over our time, but there were so many great questions everyone put forth. I didn't want to miss any of them. And thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Megan. Again, if you have any questions for Megan, I did put her email address in the chat box in case you guys missed it, or you can send it to me and I'll share them with Megan. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you for all your questions, and it's really nice to see some of your names popping up.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone. See you soon. Thank you, Don.
Thanks, Jana. I have to run. I'm going to be late to class, and the dogs have decided it's time to bark at things, fortunately. Yeah, thanks for,
all right.
organizing. This is fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bye, Jennifer.